I said, we can talk over the ads, please. No
This
problem.
is
There we go. Open up.
Harbor Town is an all-new series
I have a
from
Bloodshot
Miniature
ad
Building
on
Authority,
mine.
the leader in tabletop gaming.
It should start going. You can always
I can get
refresh it,
flexible and playable.
and it should
Harbor
start
Town
going.
will
It's
take
it's
your
running.
games to
A unique setting.
No, I am unable to log in. I'll keep trying off to the side, but in
Yeah.
the meantime, I'll be able to just.
Yeah, and if someone asks you a question, Ron, we'll let you know definitely.
Perfect,
General,
perfect.
whatever, so.
Yep.
I can see the chat. I just can't contribute to it.
Okay. You may have to log in from a separate browser. Which browser are you using?
Internet Explorer.
Oh, that's why.
Yeah, it might
use
be,
Google.
Yeah, you Google,
If you have Google
yeah,
on
Chrome
your
or something.
computer, I'd use Google.
Let me try that.
I'm running the Discord app myself. I don't think it doesn't seem to be flagging me as a VIP or whatever. I just look like a.
In chat, I haven't seen you put anything in chat yet.
Well, hopefully. Hold on.
As long
Well,
as they
I know
don't
Rox
flag
can
this.
hear us.
As
Maybe
long as
I'm
they
in the
don't
wrong
flag
chat.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it might be.
I'm
Yeah.
running the Discord app, so I'm
Okay.
No,
trying
you
to.
want to get into Twitch.
See if you, as long as they don't flag
Twitch,
you as
dang
a,
it, that's it. I'm getting those things. I'm getting those on my head. No wonder. Okay, let's try this again.
From the edge of
You
the
know,
sea.
Yeah, I missed my
From
cue
the
there
edge.
too. Look at that! Look at that
Oh.
map of the shield lands.
That is phenomenal.
Of course,
Never seen it before in my life.
There you go. Ron's in.
Aha! I'm in.
Ah,
Yes,
Don't
good,
do me
good,
one
good.
favor. Don't hit the heart until after we're on the main screen, because then it'll tick along. You just hold off on that, please. But that would be great. Fun times tonight, guys. Coming. So anyone who can hear us, it's gonna be a great one tonight. I am excited.
Perfect. Perfect, perfect.
all right, let's try this again.
What part of the U.S. was Verbobonc being run out of?
Illinois and Indiana.
Oh, okay, yep, that's right. Yeah, a lot of this stuff comes back to you slowly.
Yeah, no kidding.
I'm getting a weird duplication. Is anybody else?
Make sure you mute the audio from the Twitch. That's one.
Yeah, turn the Twitch audio off.
Yeah.
Just use the Zoom audio.
I don't have any audio on my Twitch, so that's good.
Yeah, turn your Twitch
That's
audio
good.
off.
Yep. Because otherwise we'll get a feedback.
Fun Tims are coming.
Yeah,
That's
time.
good.
Hey, what's up, Wiley? How you doing?
There we go. Now I'm in there.
Good to hear. And there, the White Griffin. So you're all good. You're all hooked.
Yeah.
Awesome.
These days I'm more off-white, but that's all right. Because of the gray.
Reaper Miniatures ad now.
Reaper
he
sponsors my channel.
Mm-hmm.
That's very cool.
Thank you. They're a fantastic sponsor, so does Stratagem.
We have so many sponsors. We have to start like an hour early soon this year. the ads here. Yep. All the cool sponsor videos. Yep.
I just went through a bunch of my old D&D stuff. It's just amazing how much you accumulate over the years.
Yeah, I paid $5,000 to get my shipped from Sweden back here, and it's kind of ironic since almost all the books were printed here and then was shipped to Europe, and then now I'm shipping them back again. So,
It's kind of a homecoming. Now, did you have Swedish versions of D&D?
no, I didn't, but I've seen them. I never bought them, but I've seen the first two of the basic D&D were actually translated to Swedish and released in Swedish, and a D&D second edition was supposed to be, and I'm one of the few people that actually saw the book, because there was a guy in Gothenburg that I knew fairly well. He was the guy that got the Swedish license, and he actually translated the second edition Player's Handbook into Swedish.
Oh, wow.
And
Wow.
yeah, and
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and they made one proof print of it. a single one, a copy to check it out, and then after that, they pulled the plug on the project for some reason. I don't know why. So I saw that book, but I don't know what happened.
Anna, Gary only just said everyone in Sweden is basically LARPing.
Yes. Oh yeah, we're LARPing all the time, no matter. Yeah. But actually, to be honest, I didn't like. I like it much better in English because a lot of the spells and stuff kind of sounds silly. They sound cooler in English. And the other problem is that then you miss all the adventures and stuff. So for me, it was kind of redundant. So I kind of like it much better to have it. But because you have so much other stuff. But there are lots of books that are published in English. And Cult is one of the few that actually made it the other way around. That was originally a Swedish game, role-playing game, and then it was
Here's your entry screen, guys.
Yep.
Welcome.
Perfect. Yeah, it's interesting, all the foreign language stuff. It was, one of my friends brought back a copy of the Living Greyhawk manual that they put out at the time from Japan. It was very cool to see. It was all in Japanese.
Some of the translations are really funny. One of the famous ones that I know about is the spring attack feat when it got translated into Japan was spring like the season. So it was actually literally like cherry blossom attack is what it was, which sounds way cooler actually.
Very cool.
I'll be honest with you, I would take that as my own. That was what.
Yeah.
No kidding.
That sounds
I don't know
What's up, Carlos? Carlos Lacing is on.
Yep. Thank you.
Casey Brown is on. Good to see everyone tonight. Having Greyhawk for Verbobonc and the Shieldlands tonight. We got 3 special guests. Good evening, everyone. How's everyone doing tonight? Back from a week off. I know Florida was rough for me. So I'm Jay, aka Lord Gazumba, and with me is, as usual, Anna Meyer and Greyhawk Mike Bridges. We got 3 special guests tonight. So we're going to introduce all 3 of them, but let me just real quickly say we got from the Living Greyhawk of the Shieldlands, we have Jeffrey Dauberpool, and from Living Greyhawk Verbobonc, we have Ron Lundeen, and we have and Vernon Vincent, who was on the original first one we did. So welcome everyone back. Hello, guys. Thank you for coming on tonight. Really excited about this.
Sure.
Why don't we just start with an introduction for anyone out in the audience who wasn't familiar with Living Greyhawk? Jeff, why don't you start us off?
Well, Living Greyhawk in general, or just kind of
whatever you'd like to talk about, like your background in gaming, D&D, living, and then just talk about,
Yeah. So I got into Dungeons and Dragons. It was 1977. Star Wars was in the theater, and I went to debate camp in Sioux Falls, and a fellow showed up there, and he had a photocopy. Now back then, the photocopies were on that really slick, crappy paper of the D&D blue box set.
Here comes
and we were cutting chits out of cardboard for dice. We tried to make a D20 by gluing triangles together. I mean, it was like insanity, and none of the rules mattered. All we did was just kind of sit down, and it was basically what D&D really was storytelling with friends and just making stuff up as you go. And I never looked back. We went to the early Gen Cons out in Kenosha. Gary Gygax would just walk over to your table, sit down, and just BS with you for 20 minutes, then get up and go. And it was just a very relaxed time. So I did that for a number of years. And when the Living Greyhawk session came out, I got involved with that, started playing, and then became a triad member. And towards the end was doing meta-regional stuff. I did quite a bit of game design around that era. I wrote a number of splat books with some other authors for Fantasy Flight Games. Probably the best role-playing game we did was Horizon Redline, which is kind of a Mad Max D20 game. And then what was the other thing? Did Monty Cook's Spell Treasury with him, and we came in second place for the ENnie that year.
Nice.
So it was a lot of fun, a lot of lot of enjoyment out of it. Shieldlands was certainly a challenge, getting gamers in there and telling them a good story and letting them have fun. So that's kind of my background in a nutshell, from the gaming perspective.
Nice. So 77. Were you the same with me? Did you have the basic D&D box set prison edition with chits? Or did you
Oh
actually-
yeah, I had 2 sets. I had one with chits and one with the first set of dice from China, and I've still got one of those where all the dice are in there.
Excellent.
But yeah, to get our first set of dice, we had to drive down to Sioux Falls from Aberdeen, where I was living, and that's, I don't know, 200 miles round trip just to get a set of dice.
Man, those
Remember
were
the
the
player's handbook?
Yep.
Go ahead.
Yeah, those were the days, though, man. That was like the
Right.
in its infancy, the excitement
Oh,
over
yeah.
a die. Yeah.
Yeah, the player's handbook came out, but you didn't have a monster man, or was it monster manual came out first, then player's handbook, and then DM's guide?
I think it was Player's Handbook first, then DM, then Monster, I think. But
DM was definitely last.
yeah,
That was definitely the last. It was just crazy stuff. And we are the only people in the area that really we thought were playing. So just for the heck of it, we put on a little mini convention up in the Northern State University, and we got people from all over. We did it 2 years in a row. It was a lot of fun. So.
well, I welcome you on here tonight, and I can't wait to hear some Shieldland stories. Anna and myself love the Shieldland, so
Yeah.
I can't wait to hear some stuff. And I have a couple questions for you, but we'll get to that. We got 2 hours here. We're going to have a blast tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Let's get to the newbie here for Verbobonc, and that's Ron. So, Ron, welcome, and tell us a little about yourself as well.
Thank you. I've got a lot of fond memories about how Living Greyhawk sort of started me out. I actually was involved very early on. I remember when the Living Greyhawk debuted at Gen Con, and I played some of the core modules there. I had touched a little bit of Living City before, but not gotten very deeply into that, and I felt like Living Greyhawk was a thing I could jump right into and embrace, and I did. At the time, I was living in Utah, so I played in Nyrond a little bit, but very quickly thereafter, I moved to Illinois in order to go to law school. I'm very surprised that the University of Chicago, a very geeky school, did not already have a role-playing game club, so I started one when I was there. And primarily what we did was to play Living Greyhawk. I'd written a little bit for Nyrond. I'd written one of their adventures. So I started writing for Verbobonc. Writing adventures, writing RPG adventures is really my love. And so I started doing a lot of writing, volunteering, ended up on the triad for that, and then orchestrating a lot of the campaigns, a lot of the plots, a lot of the adventures that came together. And then when I started to work full-time for a law firm downtown, I stepped back a little bit from the triad roles, but there were plenty of great people to sort of carry it forward there, including some Vernon guy. But I never lost my love of writing for the campaign, and I never lost my love of RPG writing generally. And so I carried forward my writing from the Living Greyhawk campaign into Paizo's Pathfinder Society organized play campaign. And even though I wasn't ever one of the administrators in that campaign, I did an awful lot of writing for them, and then for some of their game lines, and then eventually some of their big adventure paths. And just a couple years ago, when Paizo had an opening to be Adventure Path developer, I switched careers. I left the law behind and moved to Seattle to become a professional game developer. So now I work at Paizo. I'm doing that for about 2 years. And I'm, in fact, in charge of the Pathfinder Adventure Path line. So the sort of fantasy stories I've been telling all along that I really got started writing and then sort of outlining and organizing with Living Greyhawk is now the career I have. So
That's
Wow.
fantastic.
That
Yep.
is so cool.
That's pretty
Yep.
cool.
Mhm.
So now,
That is
does your
super, super
background as a lawyer allow you to navigate Paizo better than?
Good question.
yeah, well, yeah, it allows me to navigate everything better. Well, if you think about it, this is how there's an easy transition between the two. Whenever you're doing game writing, you have to be able to communicate clearly, but also very technically. in order to get the rules across. And that's exactly what a career in the law prepared me for. Communicate clearly and very technically. Same kind of thing. I'm just doing it with, orcs instead of non-disclosure agreements.
Yeah, it's so cool. Yep.
I sympathize.
Yep, that's fantastic. Yep.
Well, welcome here for the first time. Really appreciate it, Ron. Can't wait to hear some of your experiences as well in depth with the Verbobonc and whatever other stories you'd like to tell us. And this next gentleman, he needed no introduction on the last show that we did a few months back. And Vernon, welcome back.
Well, thank you for having me.
Sure.
I had an absolute blast on the last time, and I couldn't wait to talk more about myself, so I was happy to come. But seriously, if for the people that may not have been here before, my name is Vernon Vincent. I was Verbobonc Triad for Living Greyhawk from 2004 to 2008. And fun fact, it was Ron Lundeen who asked me to apply for a position on the Triad when it looked like they might be considering an opening, and I was incredibly flattered because I hadn't written too much for the region at that point. I had just done a short intro adventure an interactive mission for Ides of March 2004, and that somehow on the strength of that, let's get this guy in here if we think we can sucker him in. And then 4 years later and a lot of therapy, here we are today. I do want to say that Ron has the interesting distinction of being the only person to serve twice as Verbobonc Triad.
Okay.
When it came time, when they made the announcement to end the campaign in 2007, myself and Greg Hannigan, who were the Triad at the time, and Greg Hannigan's a very good friend of Ron's, we didn't have time to find someone else to fill in the position. And so we just asked Ron to come back because there was no one else who knew the region as well and could step in at a moment's notice to finish things up. So Ron did a hell of a job in getting things wrapped up on that.
Well, Vernon, thank you for coming back here. This is going to be an exciting one. I love that we really delved into our last discussion, which was in Furiandi. I know Jeff got stuck on a plane, right? And was supposed to be on that one. So,
good Lord.
Yeah.
Thanks for the
miserable times. So,
oh my.
How about this? So I'm going to ask one question, Anna will ask one, Michael will ask one, then you guys want to ask each other some stuff. We'll bounce all over the place. Mine is give me Jeff. We'll start with Jeff, and then we'll go. We'll start with then we'll go to Verbobonc after Shillings. Give me a synopsis of. I know it's going to sound over the 10-year campaign of what actually happened, major points that you can remember. That would affect someone running a campaign nowadays or post Living Greyhawk. If you'd like to, go over some of those, that would be fantastic. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'll give you kind of the brief synopsis.
Sure.
The Shieldland adventure started with Ius winning. So Ius, the big demon lord god guy who basically ran around and caused all kinds of problems for everybody. He basically won and knocked everybody back into the sea. The Shieldlanders scattered all over Greyhawk to the Four Winds, and we're basically down to, I think it was Critwall Castle and maybe Torkeep's Keep just outside. I can't remember on the first year if we reclaimed Torkeep. Yeah, I think we did.
Is that Franz Torkeep? Franz
Lord
Torkeep?
Franz Torkeep.
Okay, I got a picture of him scrolling. I was just curious because I have it. Okay. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, there was. I'm trying to think of his name right now. It'll come to me later.
There, Franz Torkeep.
The triad that was at the initial start of it. He did a bunch of really cool adventures where the Shieldland was just trying to expand beyond the border of Critwall Castle or Critwall City, and it was just kind of a cool. Everywhere you go, you're just gonna die. So suck it up and go fight some orcs and stuff. It was really kind of a cool way to get into D&D if you hadn't been playing before. So I think it was a pretty smart start for the campaign. Old school people could get in, and people who had never played before could get in pretty easily. So that was kind of the start of it. And over the campaign, it evolved into taking back more and more land, pushing back against Ius. More and more people would come back from around Greyhawk. One of the things we instituted, I don't know if you remember this, but you could have regional bonuses. So if you were a Shieldlands character created in the Shieldlands, you had a bonus to being able to decipher where somebody else was from by their speech patterns. So it was like a +2 on a die roll because you've been all over Greyhawk, you know, all over the Flanettes. You'd been everywhere. So, I mean, you heard people talking for Verbobonc or from Divers or wherever. And so you'd go, oh, right, your accent, aren't you from Divers? Oh, yes, that's true. So it's just kind of little things like that that we'd toss in. Eventually, we kind of got into some political stuff a little bit. We had a villainous that the party would hear about in the story, Black-Hearted Zane. She was a succubus that was basically in the royal family, taking care of the heir to the Critwall throne, so to speak. And so the party eventually tried to go after her. There was the uppity-ups that had different versions of how they should get back against Ius, and they didn't want the adventurers to succeed, that kind of thing. And eventually, you know, we obviously ended the campaign when the campaign ended, but we ended kind of on a high note with many of the lands being recovered and not quite back to where it was before the war, but at least a good status quo where there was hope for the future. So that was kind of an overarching arc, was fighting back against Ius and recovering land.
One sec. Let's see if I don't crash the stream on this.
Oh no.
I shouldn't.
My maps again.
I shouldn't. Oh, that's Verbobonc. We got your Verbobonc maps too, gents. Okay, so here's the map. Does this look correct?
No, that's my.
Oh, I got the wrong map up. Holy shit.
That's my campaign map.
Oh, and I got the campaign map up.
I
Forget
don't
that.
mind you taking that one, but it's yeah. That's
all right.
that's,
So,
there's Axport. Yeah.
How far north did they go? Did they get past the central? Did they go up to Stazer? Did they?
I mean, you don't have the map up anymore, do you?
Oh, I'm sorry. It was the incorrect map, but I'll put it back up. My bad.
That's a great map. There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my campaign version of it.
Let's see here if I can.
Because you have the walls down to the north of Critwall, which is all cool, and I was just I was curious as to the Principality of Red Hand. That was in Casey's area.
Yeah, we didn't go that way.
How about you have Ringland? I was just was curious what areas were.
Oh yeah, I think we went back up as far as Ringland. I'm trying to see here on the map. It
looks like Delcomen was reclaimed. Looks like Delcomen was
eventually.
Torkeep is way north. Torkeep was reclaimed, obviously, if it's that far north, right across from the Free Weavers' lands as well.
Yep, absolutely. That was early on.
Okay.
It kind of became a little bubble of land that kind of continually got besieged back and forth.
That's cool.
So
all right.
Go ahead.
Well, it sounds like you guys had a blast with it, which is what it was all all about. So that's a good thing. So,
well, Ron raised something interesting earlier. My background was lawyer as well. I passed the bar back in 1989, and so when I got on in the triad, I guess one of the things you had said, Ron, about organized thought, try to tell a coherent story. We looked around. We took a beat and looked around at what some of the other groups were doing and what did we want to do, and we wanted it to be a coherent story. Like every time you came back, it was the next chapter. And story would bleed into story would bleed into story. And so we really focused on telling a coherent tale throughout the time that I was there. So sometimes it was a lot of scattered modules in the earlier days. And if you took them as a whole, it was a story. Ours was more like, here's a book. Here's chapter 1. We're going to start you here going after these orcs. Chapter 2, remember those orcs? Now we're going to go after their captain. Chapter 3 and so on. Okay. So...
Yeah. Wait, first of all, how many lawyer triad members did we have? That totally resonates with me because we did much the same. Everything was sort of scattered kind of early on, but then we pulled together the threads that we really liked. Frankly, we sort of let die the threads that we didn't quite as much like.
Yes.
or stories that we wrapped up. But the last half, we ended up being very focused in the stories that we were trying to tell. And I think we weren't the only ones. And I guess to the extent there was a lot of criticism I heard in the last days of Living Greyhawk, it's that, hey, new people, like, I want to jump into this, but there's clearly a very deeply established story. Man, I don't get it. We started having sort of on-ramp documents that we would provide people to give them kind of the story so far. Did you find that? What was the Shieldlands answer to that?
We put in a ton of work to make most of the modules for all the APLs. APL was the average party level back then, so you'd have stuff for newbies all the way up, and we'd try to do a good on-ramping in the intro to the scenario. Then we would have I'm trying to think what they called them, intro mods, which were characters of level basically 1, and I don't think you could play them once you got to level 2. And so those would tell some backstory and get people in. They could play a few modules, get to second level, and kind of get a grasp of what was going on. But we really did try to make it more cinematic so that, you know, if you just started with The Empire Strikes Back, you can enjoy the whole movie, right? But, you know, we didn't want this feeling of, I just went to this movie and wasted my time. So we really did try to give people some on-ramping for these adventures. So it sounds like what you guys were doing too. That's interesting, because I know that there was some triads that said, we're not going to go that route. We're going to go with, we're writing cool stories, and it all kind of is going to be a big soup at the end. I don't think there's a wrong way to do it.
Right.
Just that's the way we chose to.
Excellent. Yeah. All right. So I know Vernon's chomping a bit. Vernon and Ron, let's hear a little synopsis of Verbobonc and the direction it went, and then I'll pop back to that nice map, which I think is probably the correct one on that. So
I'll defer to Ron on this, at least for the beginning.
Like where it went? It went nowhere. No, more specifically, it started out with the distant, sort of young, fairly harried Lord or Viscount Langard ruling the Viscounty of Verbobonc. And it ended, after many tribulations and usurpations and all that, with a less distant, more tested Viscount Langard on the throne of the Viscounty of Verbobonc.
That is a good nutshell.
So where did we go? Nowhere. I mean, there were plenty of fun adventure on the way, but the story that we wanted to make sure we were preserving was what is the right place to land this. And you've got all kinds of people in the world, both players who are playing the game and people in the world looking back and saying, that's how things were right and good. Many of them kind of suckered by a newcomer in the last few years, but otherwise landing with the very similar political situation at the top. Along the way, there were several subsidiary rulers, barons and lords and ladies that kind of came and went and schemed against each other. But I think to answer one of the questions you had early on, which is, hey, if somebody's going to get into this, what do they need to know happened in the Living Greyhawk campaign to get into it? I think you can actually pick up a lot of the in-print Greyhawk stuff, and the Viscounty of Verbobonc is very similar to how it's presented there, in that we landed with kind of the same guy in charge, the same power groups in charge. There's the gnomes of the Cron Hills, the dwarves of the mountains, and so on are still there. They all went through their own stuff in a series of stories. But we didn't have a sort of a huge obliterations, I think, that a lot of other regions had.
Well, to add on to that, if you remember, Ron, at the beginning of Year 8, we did kill off a crap ton of nobles.
That's true. Yeah, there we go.
So
that sounds like fun.
It was a night of the long knives on that one. Ron's that's a good nutshell on how Ron did it. You know, Ron summarized it, and I wanted to give him a chance because since he was tried before me, he was probably privy to things that went on in terms of the plot lines that I wasn't available to me when I came on board. But yeah, in the first 5 years of the arc, because when Living Greyhawk started, each region was asked to have a 5-year plot arc, just so that you could have something for people to do over that time period. And so we had a lot of different plot lines going on. We had issues going on with the gnomes, and we had some stuff going on with the nobles and with Lord Milanus and Lady Asbury. And we had a bunch of we had some unrest with things, and and giants everywhere doing stuff, and so there was a lot of different threads going on that kind of had to come together there towards the end of year 4 and beginning of year 5. And then as we sat down to start thinking about, okay, this campaign's not ending after 2005, where do we go from there? I'd been reading a ton of spy novels and kind of political stuff, and so I want political novels, and so I wanted to think about what's the aftermath, what comes later. After you've had giants tromping all over the place, after you've had nobles kind of sniping at each other, one of them exposed as an imposter, and then the other one supposedly coming back, and then giants, just all kinds of stuff. What's the situation in the Viscounty like? You've got a lot of people not trusting things, and so that opened up the avenue for year 6, which is what happens in the vacuum of what happens when the vacuum of the giants and the other bad guys leaves. Who comes in there to fill the vacuum? And that was the interloper that Ron referred to earlier. And so he kind of came in and started pitting nobles against one another, and you didn't, out of game people probably knew it was him, but you couldn't really pin it on him because all the nobles were behaving exactly the way they were supposed to. They just needed a nudge to make them do stupid stuff. And so we needed the beginning of year 8 to start wrapping things together because at one point we had the Viscount leave Verbobonc. He just vanished because there was a question on whether or not he was really the Viscount. So
did they look under the Temple of Elemental Evil?
Oh, no.
Nor could we. Nor could we.
Yes.
There were several regions that had what were set aside as core space within their realm, where they're like, you can't tell stories here.
Right.
Yeah. We're reserving that for.
Well, Ron just went
core, and smack in the middle of Verbobonc was one of those places we weren't allowed to touch. That doesn't mean we didn't try a few times, but
we had White Plume Mountain. We weren't allowed to go up there really, and
what's up with that?
What a tease.
Well,
so
we just had a lot of very weird design rules. I mean, there was just the writer's guide was do what you want unless it's something like this, in which case don't do it at all. I remember they said they don't want any time travel stories, for example. So there were just odd decisions that were made, and I'm sure there was an overreaching reason. But there were some handcuffs on everybody.
And so, it's exactly right. We couldn't touch the Temple of Elemental Evil, and so anyway, so the Viscount was hidden elsewhere, and so that left the avenue for the interloper to come in and knock over a few more anthills and try to take over the place and kill off a whole bunch of extraneous nobles that got in his way. And at the end of the campaign, good triumphed over evil at the end, and with a lot of bloodshed, and it gave some high-level characters a chance to pounce and strut their stuff. So I guess if I were to summarize Verbobonc at the end of Living Greyhawk, Ron's right. We've got a tried and tested Viscount, but we've also got a Viscounty that's kind of a bit shaky. They've had a lot of stuff happen to them in those 8 years. You had giants tromp in, you had gnomes threaten to succeed, you had nobility fighting at each other, a whole bunch of them killed off, and so they're a bit skittish. I think at one point our interloper was going to try to take over the Furiundian Royal Mint, but I don't think I could have gotten that past the circle. Because I had a plan out for everything. Yep. So Verbobonc is very much a place of where you can come in and make your mark as it stands right now, because people are a bit shell shocked, and if you were to pick up at the end of that time.
Let's show the map real quick, because I have the right one.
Yeah. And I thought that Verbobonc was the quietest, good-hearted corner of the Flanese apart from the Temple of Elemental Evil.
Lord, no. We've got a town every 2 feet in
this
there.
Thing is jack loaded with towns, my gosh.
Oh, yeah. I even had to not put stuff there because it was so much.
Yeah, I compared it to an air traffic control map last time, and that's not far wrong. I mean,
Yeah.
it's everywhere.
I actually
Well-
made an aviation map of the Greyhawk area just to show different types of maps.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we had the interesting thing about this is we've got plenty of places that were canonically introduced in Verbobonc.
Mhm.
And Verbobonc, frankly, wasn't initially a very deeply described place because
No.
it's where you go to the Temple of Elemental Evil.
It's on
And
there.
plus there's some gnomes in the Cron Hills, and that's kind of that.
Yeah.
So there are a few places that were canonically on the Greyhawk map, but what we were able to do over a lot of time is to build up more locations. And unfortunately, in the early days, it was a lot of need a town, just invent one, we'll drop it in anywhere. And near the end, in the Vernon Vincent era, it was a lot more calculated about, okay, what town do we need? What do we have? What have we already built? And how can we use something that's familiar to people rather than just, and here's this new thing.
Yeah, and I think we actually destroyed a few towns in some of the adventures to show them how much their effort was worth it.
Well, I like you got Woodstock in there. That's a cool name. So
Yeah.
and a bunch of other ones. Hey, detail's a good thing. And that's the thing with the Greyhawk map. There's plenty of room. There's still plenty of room on that map because there's Anna, what's the scale on that? An old hex is 12 miles.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's plenty of room
the
on
hexes.
that map.
I used I love the 3.5 and Pathfinder 12-mile hexes because it makes much more sense when it comes to overland travel times. The 30-mile hex doesn't really game mechanically doesn't make sense that much. So that's why I chose to, and I've used Pathfinder now for like 12 years.
Right.
So since it came out, so that's why I chose the 12-mile hex. And but then for my 576 map, there is a version with 30-mile hexes too. So if you download the PDF version, you can either have 12-mile hexes or you can have 30-mile hexes. So yeah.
One
Hey,
thing,
Anna, did you when you put your map together, did you look at any of the old module information from Village of Hamlet and Temple of Elemental Evil?
I tried to read as much as possible. Yeah.
Yeah, they had some pretty famous math errors in there. One said that it was only so far.
Yep.
Then the next one says the moat house is a day away.
Yep.
Well, it's like 12
There's
outside of
tons of stuff like that. There's so many different things that and I usually my order of that I go with is usually the text. I simply assume that the writer knows more than the map maker, because now I do commission work for other publishers and stuff, and I know I'm almost the last to know, and so I know that it's done without having too much to do with the text. So I always trust the text sources first. But the problem is, like you say, some text sources said this and some say something else. So then you have to simply so I try to make it so no one is completely wrong, and so it kind of fits the story, and skip these precise. If someone says it's 12 miles and someone else says it's like took 6 days to go there, then I simply adjust them. And also it needs to look fairly like the Darlene map and stuff. You can't twist things too much, because then people
right.
no, it doesn't look like that. So yeah.
Couple of things. Joe Selby rated us. That's Jay Lloyd, so another living Greyhawker. Just wanted you guys to make sure if you put two and two together.
Selby.
Okay. All right, that's who that was. Two, Christoph has a question I wanted to put out there real quick because it's getting way behind on the pushing back Ius. Wasn't there a high-level core mod at the end where Ius fought Kerman Mindbender and possibly defeated one or both of them? Was that happen? Did it happen in the Shieldlands there, Jeff? Did you recall?
I think that went in the into a core module.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that was one the very last core modules that they did.
Okay.
So for people who don't know, the core modules were modules that could be written for anywhere in the FLNS, whereas the Shieldland local ones, Verbobonc local ones, would only be written for that region. So I think that was a core one, if I'm not mistaken. I know we didn't do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm almost positive Furiandi did it. We talked about it on the last show with Furiandi. I think that.
Could be.
Yeah, I think that they had it in the core as a core module. All right, Anna, Mike, what questions do you have for these gentlemen?
Well, I'm kind of curious if you kind of answered. If you answered part of it, meaning the hand you were dealt to begin with from the Sergeant era was kind of not that good, so to speak. Meaning the Shieldlands were just run over by Ius, and you held on to that tiny little bit. But it's interesting. Was it a very militaristic kind of warlike? Most of this, I've read them like 10 years ago, and now I've forgot the detail of the scenarios. Or
that's a good question. what we did before we even sat down and wrote a module, we said, what do we want gameplay in the Shieldlands to be like? And I had a philosophy, and I follow it through to DMing today. The Dungeon Master is a vessel for the players. The players are the heroes. So we wanted to tell stories where the players got to be heroes. If the players weren't going to be heroes, why are you going to show up? I've played in so many modules where every person you meet treats the character as a complete idiot or a loon, and there's no way to solve it unless you kowtow and do it. We were done with that. We had people flying in from Florida, for cripe's sakes, to play a game. Yeah. If you're going to be on a plane for 4 hours and pay all that money, you need a good gaming experience.
Yep.
So that was the number one thing we took. The second thing is we said, well, this is nothing but opportunity. So everything we do is good. I mean, no matter what storyline we want to tell, we can go with it because there's so much room for this. We developed a good solid set of characters that the players can interact with. We had an ambassador, or I'm not sure what the right word is, an advisor to the royal group called Shelton Halfhand. He was a high-level cleric, I believe, of Hieronius, and he thought adventurers were the wrong way to go. He thought everybody should be conscripted into the army, and to heck with you. And he was our one single rule breaker with players are heroes, but it gave them somebody to rally around. You know, that was the guy that they could every module count on saying, okay, how do we prove this guy wrong? How do we go and be the heroic self that we are? And he eventually met a very grim end and put on a helm of opposite alignment by mistake and became the villain of his own piece. So that was kind of fun.
Wow.
Very nice.
That's a wonderful approach. Yeah, it's a great approach. Yeah.
Yeah. So then they got a little bit of revenge. And then we also did another thing too, where we decided that we were going to give the players knowledge of things happening that they couldn't otherwise know. So we would do movie moments at the start of the modules where we would give box text of stuff that they aren't even involved in, but it gave them more background about that story. There was a famous one where black-hearted Zane the succubus is tucking the little boy into bed. And I had players come up afterwards going, I just wanted to roll initiative. I mean, come on, you know. Yeah. So it gives them a little bit of the background of the story, even if they hadn't been playing before, and gives them some context of what else is going on in the module. Yeah. So I guess that's what we did is we took those kind of things, you know, that you're the last survivors, and gave it a reason to move forward. You know, what's your goal? You're going to be a hero, and that's really what we went with. Try to give them as much heroic opportunities as possible.
That's great. And one follow-up question, meaning the Shieldlands is kind of the geographically the least interesting part of the Flannies, bar maybe for you. I mean, it's just a flat green blob on the Darlene map. There's no detail whatsoever, meaning there's no big forest, no mountains, even no hills. There's just nothing more than, so I just imagine it being an empty grassland basically, and then you have the highlands up to the volcano that was off limits, so to speak, the White Plume Mountain. So how did you deal with that?
It was great because we're from the Midwest, and because we're from the Midwest, we're used to Great Plains and rolling waves of grain. We would do winter modules. There was a really good Rick LaRue. Rick LaRue was the original triad member, and he played a Torkeep was kind of drawn to look like him.
Oh, and, really? Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, kind of the bearded Norseman kind of a guy. And so there was a great adventure where you're fighting out in the snow, and it was kind of a running battle. And then eventually you realize the snow you're on is covering a frozen lake. And then the more armor you wore, the more chance you have of just breaking through the ice and falling through.
I like it.
So, I mean, there were some really cool things that we did because of the terrain like that.
Yeah.
And because it's wide open, you could go anywhere and do anything. We would have, lots of scouting missions, raiding parties, and then that would go asunder and they'd find something else. I'm reminded of one of our favorite ones. We weren't allowed to do time travel per se, but Jason Bullman let us do a time travel story as long as we called it a dream state, because I guess if it's a dream state, that's somehow okay, but time travel isn't. The party went back in time right before the guy was invaded.
Oh.
And there was absolutely nothing they could do to save those people, but they got all the clues they needed for the next module. And I think that's the one that introduced a cool character. We had Gildar Arcanics. He was a gold dragon who opposed Ius and everything, but he couldn't use all of his powers because then he'd just be targeted and killed. So he was a super powerful guy, and we kind of wrote him as kind of a Doctor Who sort of character. He'd pop in, be pretty much useless most of the module, and then come up and cheer on his companion and say, "Oh, good job." Off you go again.
Like Philidor.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say Fizzband, but then I'd have to shoot myself. I'm sorry. I didn't want to do a Dragonlance reference. But cool. So, Ron, Vernon, you want to tackle that at all, or respond to the question that we got from Skanky Santa on interactives too? That one. The account was just created 15 minutes ago, 19 minutes ago. So it's probably someone you guys know.
I know who the Skanky Santa is.
Okay.
With a name like Skanky Santa, it has to be good.
Yeah.
Skanky Santa was asking about interactives. And that's a sentence I don't really hope to say again in my life. Interactives were special one-shot events, typically, that a region could custom create for a convention, and they typically dealt with unique situations. I think last time I talked about the siege of Admin Fort that I believe Divers. I think you did that with Shield Lance, if I remember right. And then we did many in Verbobonc. Greg Marks talked about the ones he did for High Folk. They were unique one-shot scenarios that gave your character a chance to participate in a particularly major event and have an impact on the plot line. So they weren't really replayable, although there were a few instances where we made a few of them replayable and as such, and we just yanked out all the special stuff. But they were really supposed to be unique events. I remember we had during our Dwarven plot arc, for example, for our clan Rockhall Dwarves, they were trying to reclaim their homeland, and we had a massive battle interactive that occurred right before the premiere of the final adventure in that series to just basically showcase and describe just the work that the dwarves had to do to get into and break into their kingdom and work on driving out the people who were living there. And so that was a major event, and at the end of that particular series, we gave out a replica of the special dwarven artifact that they had called Wormslayer, and we created a special one that was a kind of like a lesser copy, but still uniquely upgradable with time units and investments of experience points. And Ron, I believe, pilfered that idea or had the same idea when he wrote his wonderful adventure, Fallen Hero, a year 5 adventure. We started getting our own little regalia of Verbobonc with the shield and the axe and the armor right. Out.
And all of them were designed specifically so that the more you played in Verbobonc, the better they got. So the more invested your character was in the region, the better they'd be, the better you do.
Yes, that was a common theme we tried to put into Verbobonc was the more you participated, the more you put into it, the more you got out of it. That was that way. It was that way with the town project that we created. It was that way with a lot of the magic items. Even the meta orgs, they rewarded you for your involvement in there, which was the very least we could do for someone willing to spend their time and play in our area.
I'm sorry, guys. I'm from Illinois. I didn't get involved.
Damn.
Regrets.
God bless it. Get out of here. That's all right, Mike. There's still time for dreams to come true.
Yeah, those interactives were crazy stuff, though.
Oh, yeah.
And they weren't. And what was kind of fun about them, and people might blow their mind, you could be a first level character playing with a 12th level character fighting a 16th level monster in one battle. You know, it really wasn't constrained. Some of them were not constrained by hit dice or anything like that. There was a few Shieldland interactives that were pretty famous where you just saw the monsters coming and you decided what group you're going to fit in on. If you're level 1 and you think you want to go against the red dragon, God bless you. There you go. You go have fun. You know, if you want to be the high level wizard on a flying carpet and blow up a bunch of goblins with a fireball, go have fun. So they were zany, and they were often rule breakers too, which was kind of fun. So
Yeah,
I think that was a good description.
Yeah, there's a lot of place in interactives for people to affect more than just the table of the players they're at. And that really resonated with a lot of people, either because they were specifically, oh, I've completed this objective, and now everybody else in this room of 100 people now finds this particular task easier or harder. That lets the people who completed the objective know, oh, this is a thing I did. This is a way that I have contributed. To the occasional rules, the specific rules changes that you could make. I remember we had one of our interactives with a very high-level bard with an alphorn who was giving +4/+4 to all of the players, sort of not just at his table, but throughout the interactive that could hear him. And the other, 12th, 13th level characters, whatever they were at his table, were like, all right, well, that is a numerical bonus that is expected. Let me fight with it, right? That's correct for my level, and I enjoy the bonus. Thank you. But then the first level players of the next table over are like, wait, we get what? We get what kind of bonus now? Yeah, let's get them.
Well, I'm glad you guys had a blast with it, and I really like what I see on here, the discussion that you guys really worked like hand in hand with divers, right? And that's awesome.
Oh, and other regions too, to the extent that we could. But I'll talk about Joe Selby and I, Joe, who was on the last time that I was here. Joe Selby and I really worked well together. We were both points of contact for our region, but we both had similar views on how things should work, and we just bounced ideas off of one another, and then we could all take those back to our other triads, and we could all discuss and work together. And it was just an incredible. I've talked so much about the friendships and the collaboration that occurred not only within our triads but with other triads as well, and that's truly what made the special moments in the campaign really a success. We had great relationships with the High Folk Triad. I know other triads had worked well with their counterparts, and that's the sort of stuff that made the campaign. It elevated it above just going someplace to play adventures. You were working in an environment where there was a continuity and on top of that a synergy of friendship that just it's hard to explain, but I think people understand what I mean when I talk about that. What it's like when you're working with people that you click with. And
it was probably more with your meta regional group, right?
Yeah.
Well, this is one of the reasons that this really happened, I think, and this is I didn't realize this until much later, and I'm getting around to a question for Vernon.
Good.
Which is, what region was your favorite character from? But let me back up to say, as the administrators, we weren't permitted to have our characters advance. So I wasn't allowed to play a Verbobonc character. I was on the Verbobonc Triad or in the meta region. But because people get really invested in their characters, and because people really like to play, most of the Triad members I know had characters that they played in the neighboring regions that they got to go play a lot. So I know one of my fellow Triad members, his High Folk character was absolutely his favorite character. My Divers character was absolutely my favorite character. So I know that we would participate in these cross-region events, not just because not only because we wanted to creatively see this combination succeed, but because we had the kind of personal investment that really made the whole Living Greyhawk campaign take off. So Vernon, what region was your favorite character from?
Well, my favorite character was the first Living Greyhawk character I created, my Paladin, Owen of Hamlet. And I never got to play. I didn't get to play him nearly that often when I became Triad, but I moved him to Baluna, which of course was a place I never visited at all. He was just my favorite character. I had a great backstory for him. He had a character arc almost, and that when I think of my time playing Living Greyhawk, and he was the one that was invested in the town project when it first started. And that was maybe that's part of it, because the town project was what drew me into the region, because it was just starting at that point, and the friendships I made with that and the interactions that character had. We weren't just playing with other players; we were playing with people from the town of Swan, and so yeah, that was my favorite character, absolutely. And so instead of getting to play him in Balloon, I just wrote a whole bunch of in-character posts about him flying around doing the bookmobile for Balloona.
That's fun.
Yeah.
So, Mike, what do you got for these guys?
Well, maybe kind of staying on the same topic they were doing. I, like Anna, I'm a big map person, and I'm always, I can't be contained by one region. Maybe that's why Living Rag didn't, appeal to me. So I guess the question is, you guys spent a lot of time in these regions, meta regions. What region would you have, hypothetically wished to work in, other than the one you had to work in for fun? What other region would you do?
Well, I would have taken Verbobonc, no problem. I mean, it's just got all these crazy backstories. It's kind of D&D original. You got Village of Hamlet. You got all that stuff. Even if you can't use them to play in,
right?
You're basic. That's kind of the OG area. Greyhawk City itself was off limit except for cores and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean,
Interesting.
that would have been it.
How about you, Ron and Vernon? What do you think?
I don't know how to answer that. I mean, that's a hard one for me to answer. I like all the region. It's going to sound ironic. I think I would say Shieldlands, just because the character I started with was a paladin, and that seems to be the perfect place for a Shieldlands character to be. But I would have loved Furiundi too, probably Balloona. I'm thinking of the classic locations.
Something on the front lines.
Say that again.
Something on the front lines.
Yeah, or like Jeff, where you had the giants that you were facing there from the giant series. So someplace almost archetypical like that, or maybe someplace bordering the Great Kingdom. Although I didn't know as much. There wasn't as much about that beyond Ivad the Undying, but it didn't have the archetypical locations like Jeff and some of the other India do.
I don't know. I myself I think I probably would have to pick Verbobonc, but that's with the hindsight of knowing everything that we did with it.
Well, yeah.
I will say the one region that I felt was a little bit misallocated, because my first year of living Greyhawk, I lived in Utah and played in Nyrond. But many of the players in Utah that I know sort of scratched their heads and wondered why the Pale was California, Nevada, and that's the region that is a theocracy, an overt theocracy. And those of us living in the real world state of Utah were like, wait, why didn't we get the Pale? we feel like we live in an overt theocracy. Why didn't that matchup happen?
That's funny.
Yeah.
I guess to allow more role playing.
Yeah,
I don't know.
We know they will side with the clergy in the Pale.
So just a quickie, another
I will say, you just raised an interesting question about the regions. That I think was the brilliance of living Greyhawk, was all these regions. So you had all these different stories that you could only play in that region. And I know that some people list that as a negative. I always saw that as a positive. People traveled around the U.S. If they were on vacation. Both the times I was in the United Kingdom, I looked up for games and played with those folks. It was actually really cool to just go somewhere else and sit down with your character. You could hop in at a table and away you go. And you'd learn about other people too. When we were in the UK, at least the players that I played with, there was about 3 different tables. If your character died, they did not do resurrections or anything like that. They just didn't do it. And my character that I played was a necromancer, and they were making knowledge checks to see any spell I cast was necromancy, because then they were going to put me to the sword. It was just
wow.
It was just a totally different, weird way of playing D&D. It was fun.
Well, yeah.
But I think that was the brilliance of Living Greyhawk that you missed today with some of the organized play.
Well,
I actually have. I want to jump in with an on-wall experience that I had
yeah,
as
go
well.
for it. Absolutely.
I actually played an on-wall on my honeymoon. We went to England, and bless my wife, she was happy to let me go off and
Yeah.
Wow.
play a couple rounds of Living Greyhawk at a local convention while she looked at royal dresses or something that was about as interesting to me as Living Greyhawk would have been to her at the time. I did get her into it later, actually, but and so one of the adventures that we played had this cairn full of evil wraiths that would just come boiling out of it, right? And we were all, like third level characters. There's no way we could take even one wraith, much less like a whole
Magic
horde of them.
weapons needed. Yeah.
Yeah, but we knew that this entry was where this cave was where all these wraiths were coming from. We get into a fight outside of it with some cultists or people that we were, kind of meant to attack. And the barbarian goes into a rage. He gets hit. The player playing the barbarian gets hit and goes into this rage, and we defeat all the enemies. And the barbarian is like, "Oh well, I'm in a rage. I guess I have to run into the cave and fight now because I know there's enemies there." And I'm like,
God.
"No, that's actually not true." But all of the other players who were all part of the on-wall were kind of nodding and like shaking his hand and like, "Man, that was a good character you had there because he's certainly going to die." I'm like, "No, you don't have to do that. Nothing is making you do that." Because all right, I guess I'm running into the cave full of wraiths and that's the last anyone's ever going to see of me. And they're like, "Oh, what a hero." I'm like, wait, is this, man, this is a very different feeling region.
Wow.
Yeah, that you know what? That's funny because that is exactly the sort of thing I would see. Yep, you're spot on, my friend.
Yeah.
That was cool.
Literalists, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Literally taking the rules
Yes.
and saying this is what you must do. Wow. All right. Now, me not being a Living Greyhawk guy and having my own campaign all this time, but I would get the Dungeons and Dragon magazine every month or every bi-monthly or whatever. I'd get tidbits. Here's a tidbit for you, Jeff. This is by Rick LaRue. It was in a Dungeon magazine, August 2004. Valor is Our Blood. Living Greyhawk about the Order of Knights of the Holy Shielding. Do you remember this? Have you ever seen this?
The Knights of the Holy Shielding?
This article was in Dungeon and it went over details and it says it says it right there. Living Greyhawk approved right there, see? And it was by Rick LaRue.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
What issue?
Dungeon August 2004. So I'm not sure the specific number on that. It doesn't have it on here, but
Okay.
yeah, it was out of Dungeon magazine, not Dragon, and this was a great article, and it really went over what was going on with the Order of the Holy Shielding, and that's where I got all the pictures that I'm scrolling of Katarina and Inkasi and Franz Torkeep is out of this article as well. So I was just curious that, and they also have the Knight of the Holy Shielding Prestige class in here for 3.5, right? They have that. They have that detailed in here. Neat stuff. I was just wondering if you knew about how this article was decided to go to publishing. Did you contribute at all to it?
Well,
Good.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Back then there was, and it evaporated somewhat quickly. There was a desire to get the Living Greyhawk thing out to the masses, so they were looking for articles, as I understand it, that they could inspire people to be in. And Rick with the Shieldlands was prolific at writing, and very savvy dungeon designer, very savvy module writer. And so I'm not exactly sure why he was picked, although he was good friends with Greg Marks and Jason Bullman and all those groups, as well as others. So it was probably a name that got bounced around. And I'm sure that's how that article got put together. We used to write up mini synopses and send in.
Okay.
And then once in a blue moon, it'd get printed in some magazine. Most of the time, it just never saw the light of day. And then I think they did a couple of updates on the website too. But yeah, that was probably our biggest one that ever got in. That was very early too.
Well, and just to say this, that this actually affected. I used this information and used it in my campaign, and to this day, characters that are in our campaign. They're Katarina is one of my 3 oligarchs running the Shieldlands now, and she has appeared in the last adventure we did in the Shieldlands. So I actually used data from this article. I just wanted to say thank you.
Cool.
Yeah, it's good, and we actually do a 1E2. We have a Knight class, and we have a Knight of the Holy Shielding, a Knight of Ulick, and a Knight of the Heart as a specialized class in 1E2 rules that I kind of used the template for this. So I just wanted to say, hey, thank you, Shieldlanders, for this great article. So,
there was a lot of stuff that a lot of people wrote, and I'm kind of bummed it never got into a consolidated book or something. But most of the regions had their own regional handbook that they would put together. Like we had a Shieldlands handbook that went over all of the various factions that you could be a member of. I remember Foltest of the Blinding Light was a deity that was in the Shieldlands, and we came up with kind of a fanatical subgroup called the Flambus Morti, I believe they were, where basically they were complete loons and would burn themselves each morning and take damage in order to purge themselves of their sins.
Sounds familiar.
It was kind of some crazy stuff. And but we're just one region, and I know these meta-regional or these regional handbooks existed, and there's just glorious stuff in them, just glorious. And I was always depressed those didn't get amassed together somewhere.
Well,
you guys must have had one in Verbobonc, didn't you?
Yeah, could you guys share that story? Because you were showing it before the show. I mean, well, you got these crazy hardback books. Now, Casey did print his. There's Casey's.
Hold on, let me get mine here.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
No, well, that's only one. There
unbelievable.
are in fact 3 books.
Read them when we.
That's
That's
insane.
glorious.
A priceless keepsake.
So I put these together right at the end of the campaign. What I did is I took got all of the adventures, summaries, interactives that we'd done in Verbobonc, printed them out on archival paper and got them bound in these 3 books. And I did that for, I think I made 4 copies of them. And distributed those to the triad, sort of a thank you, farewell thing.
That's a lot of data.
Nice.
So it is, yeah. Glory Town. Yeah, the guy that wrote that's really talented and handsome.
Humble too. Don't forget humble.
Totally humble. Anyway, so what this did is it's kind of a good keepsake to be able to show everything that we did. I even knew at the time that an electronic repository of the adventures would frankly be a little more useful, but this was intended to be something that's kind of a keepsake to go up on the shelves. And I do have to say that the timing of this is really good. You'd mentioned Greg Hannigan, good friend of mine still, who is a member of the Triad at the time. When I moved from Illinois to take the job at Paizo here in the Pacific Northwest, I had to leave a bunch of stuff, mostly gaming stuff, in his basement. And I just made a road trip back with my son just a couple weeks ago. And one of the advantages of the road trip is I was able to finally get all those boxes out of Greg's basement and drive them back to the Seattle area with me. And in those boxes were my 3 Verbobonc books.
Yep.
So I have had these inaccessible to me for the last 2 years, and now I have, which is frankly why they're out, because I've been looking through these and remembering sort of all the good times putting these together, places that I felt really clever where we tied plots together, and places where I'm looking at something and going, why did we ever choose to do that?
Oh man, I have those books on my shelf, and I will occasionally take them down just to admire the fine Corinthian leather on them, and to caress the binding. But that's the first time I've opened that book in years, because I don't want anything to crack. I love that set. And I can't thank you enough for giving me that, Ron. That was I love that. That is like a wonderful. I look at that. It's like, yeah, that was pretty phenomenal.
Remember,
Ron, what are the chances of getting a softback print of that in the future? Like Casey did with Bandit Kingdoms.
Oh man, I don't know what the legal rights on that would be. Pretty complicated, frankly.
Okay.
So
Hey, we have 2 lawyers here.
I know. Look,
Let's
see, we
hash it
got
out.
our Bandit Kingdoms one. We're going to show it off
Yeah.
the
but that
Bandit
doesn't
Kingdoms
mean it
one.
wouldn't be complicated. It would mean it would be expensive, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
Let's do it.
the Franklin Mint Verbobonc collection has every Verbobonc adventure in it.
Okay,
So
so that'd be an issue.
the chances of it being published legitimately are slim to none.
Got it.
However, again, I'm sure I know someone who can get you a dime bag of Verbobonc if you ask nicely. So.
That's awesome.
I think we still have all the Shieldland stuff. I was looking for all the materials in prep for this, and there might be 1 or 2 modules missing, but I think we've got pretty much. Pretty cool. So just not anything as glorious as that. That's fantastic.
And
yeah, the embossing on the cover, I think, is what really makes that.
Oh,
That's great.
all right, so
I could probably get that to shine if I do that. Ooh. Anyway.
24 karat gold leaf, lovingly painted on here by gnomes from Verbobonc. It's quite simply a keepsake, a treasure for years to come.
Yeah.
here's another keepsake question. Which of you all have the shields? Do you have the shields?
I don't know that we ever got a shield.
No.
I never got
No.
a shield. Never saw it.
Okay, because
I believe it exists because I've seen Jason Bowman's Iron Shield. He keeps it in his office at Paizo.
Okay. Okay.
I'm gonna knock off Greg Marks in an alley one day and steal his high folk shield because we never got one.
Yeah, Vernon, who do you think? Was it Michael Breslin might have ended up with the Verbobonc shield? One of the early Triad members?
It would have been Breslin. There was like one mythological Triad before him whose name I've never been able to track down. But if anybody would have it, it would be him.
Okay.
But I've never heard of him having it.
Jeff, do you know if you guys had that shield somewhere?
The only guy that might it didn't exist by the time I got it.
Okay. I know we had just seen a couple in the previous shows,
yeah.
and they were showing them off, and I was curious
Yep.
as to seeing. I already tried buying one, and there's no way that was happening. So,
Yeah.
Well, at this point, it would frankly probably be cheaper to have one made.
Oh,
with
yeah.
the advances in sort of
and
printing technology.
the last gentleman on gave us that company that made them. So that was cool. So Anna, Mike, you're good.
I was gonna say, what company was that?
You guys are.
Oh, sorry, Jeff.
Jeff, yeah,
Somebody had a full box castle that they shipped from Triad to Triad to use for interactives.
Oh, really?
Do you remember seeing that?
What was that shifting?
Yeah,
from?
it came by the Shieldland.
You're going on and off, Jeff. You're going on and off.
Oh, sorry.
No problem. No problem.
Better. Yeah, there was one gamer had built an in-scale castle. It was massive. I mean, it'd take up a number of tables, and it got shipped from Triad to Triad for a while to use for interactives. I'm just wondering if you guys ever saw it.
No.
I always wondered whatever ended up with
Rumors
that.
that's a good thing. Bringing back some old stories like that. Like, where is the castle? Who used it? Maybe we'll find out in a future one too. But so Joe Selby's already committed to next month's. So we already have Joe coming on for Divers discussion next month, which is cool.
Hey, can I tell you a Joe Selby story?
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
He was in the Divers region. He was out of state, and he came up. He lived in Missouri, I believe. Is that right, Vernon?
St. Louis.
Okay, so he came up from St. Louis, and he emailed me kind of out of the blue saying, hey, one Triad member to another, I'm coming to Chicago just for like one night. Can I crash at your place? Just, and then turn around and head back. I'm like, sure, hardly know this guy, but he's, fellow Triad member, and I'm happy to do the favor. And so he actually showed up at my place pretty late. He told me, he's like, I'm going to do this show in Chicago, and then I'm going to show up pretty late, which is fine. And when he came pretty late, he was so excited because he had seen an early version of this movie, no special effects, but he was trying to tell me about this space western movie with these characters. I had no idea what the heck he was talking about, but he was so infectiously interested in it that I had when I finally saw Serenity and the Serenity movie coming out and Firefly. I'm like, this is that thing Joe Selby was so excited about. So I'm like, well, it's worth checking out then, because he was so excited about it. It was fantastic. I'd never have gotten into Firefly if it wasn't for Joe Selby coming up for a effects-free pre-release Chicago area showing of some. I think it was of the Serenity movie. I'm not sure, but that was really neat. So the weird way people can touch your lives sometimes. That's
Ron.
how.
No kidding.
Yep.
Firefly Adventures. Bring in some brown coats.
Oh, look at that!
All right, so not just a D&D guy. Yep, so cool. That is cool. But yeah, we'll have Joe and we'll ask a couple others to come on next month, which is fantastic. Keep this going. Keep so glad you all said to come on tonight. This is I'm really appreciating these discussions because I'm learning a lot.
This is fantastic.
Yeah,
Yep.
Anna, Mike, let's hit these gents up with a couple more questions.
Let's see. This is kind of. Let's see if I was thinking about something like 5 minutes ago, but then Ron's awesome story kind of. I had a question.
I do that. I have that tendency. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
it was awesome, but let's see here. There was something I was thinking.
I got one.
Okay,
If you,
perfect.
I have
Yeah,
one.
thank you.
main antithesis over the course of the entire campaign. Maybe there was a couple, but go for it. Jeff, was it
What do you
Ius?
mean by that?
Like, I know Ius is the main one, but we found out that in the Furiundi that the vampiric Thrommel was another one. Like, was there like some side? Was there greater Boneheart members or
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah, good question. Yeah, Mike was going to say Boneheart.
Antagonists.
Yeah. Beside,
I guess we early on it was basically Iusian of the week that you were killing off in the early modules. There was some high elves that would get involved from time to time, a group called the Moonlight that would show up and try to help the Shieldlanders recover some land and stuff like that. And so you did have some weird adventures where you fought the Fae. That's where we gave out one of our first regional ones that got people coming up to our region. We gave out a talking dog, and people wanted that for their cert, Bo the dog. And so that was kind of one of the early things that we had, fighting Fae, that kind of thing. But as we moved along and kind of coalesced the storylines, it really became this power behind the throne thing. Lady Katarina was the default head of the Shieldlands. And we had this series of stories going where the parties learned that not everybody wanted Lady Katarina to be in charge. And so they would do these adventures, and sometimes the enemy was ourselves, other Shieldlanders with darker motives. In that mix came black-hearted Zane. She was a succubus that ingratiated herself into the crit wall and basically into the royal family and did a lot of puppet string pulling. We also had a guy, Lord Shelton Halfhand, that I talked about before, a cleric. And the party was, players were convinced that he was chaotic evil or something, but he wasn't. He was a lawful good guy. He just didn't like adventurers, and so he'd give them a bad time. And so we had a lot of antagonists in that sort of way. Then we had kind of an existential threat. There was the Black Plague of Ius, if you remember, that was going around. And so that became a major storyline for us of trying to find a cure for it, or ways that the Shieldlands could at least resist it. So those were some of kind of the foes and storylines we had that weren't just directly fighting Ius every week. Now with that though, don't forget we had the meta-regional adventures too. And sometimes those are often forgot about, but some of those were just really great storylines. And in there, Jason Bowman really kind of originally had kind of an iron grasp on Ius area, and we had a lot of really good high-level adventures that went into the Ius region more than just our own Shieldlands, and that involved high folk and divers and all that sort of thing. That was
Did
kind
the
of
events of City of Skulls?
what was that?
City of Skulls, the
Yeah.
rescue for the Earl.
Yeah, I think there was a module with that.
I mean, did that affect your storyline?
Not directly for us. No. That was something that I think that they messed around with. There were some lords and nobles that we'd pick up from time to time, but it really was more bolstering the council and stuff that the party wasn't directly involved in. More storyline as opposed to character interaction and stuff. But there were some really good modules out there.
Yeah, I bypassed the City of Skulls completely. I had Homer just killed. It just made it. It was kind of a. I don't know. I'm not. I love the background story in it, but I'm not a fan overall of the whole adventure. But that's for neither here nor there. So, Vernon, Ron,
yeah, if you ever get a chance to investigate those meta regionals, that'd be great. There's some good stuff.
Cool.
Man. Yeah.
Vernon, Ron, what do you want to say about that? As far as your, it sounds like you had a whole bunch of different ones.
We had a bunch of adversaries at the in the first arc, and then we condensed it down to one major jerk for the last three adventures. Let's see, for the villains of the first 5 years were this mysterious woman called the Cowled Lady, who was an agent of Ius, and she was the one that was stirring up all of the giants and which were harassing the gnomes and getting them to fighting the war on that front. And then we had a noble in our region named Lord Milanus, who supposedly went off to fight in the Greyhawk Wars and came back a changed man. And so he was the Lord Milanus that came back was actually proven to be an imposter. He was another agent of Ius sent to destabilize Verbobonc. And then our third bad guy was everybody's favorite evil dwarf Obmi.
Oh, Lord Omni, yeah.
Yeah, he was there harassing the dwarves and just generally being this free-floating agent of death, doom, and destruction. Ron's wonderful Year 4 adventure, Wicked 3, actually, it was a VER 409, I believe, was the one that
Hang
actually...
on, I can check the book and see.
Would you check the Franklin Mint collection, sir? He's the one that wrote the adventure that actually clued everybody in. These three jokers were all working together, and so we ended up with a massive battle, and everybody was routed, killed, or in the case of Obmi, supposedly vanished. And then into this vacuum came Lord Estaval, who was supposedly this scion of a Kiowish nobility from
ate him already.
From the time when what was that?
Said I ate him already.
Yes. So he was this time from when Keelan occupied Verbobonc, and in the course of things, we found out that Lord Estaval was really Halmadar from the first edition adventure. What was it? Vecna Lives.
Wow.
Vecna Lives. Yeah. So because he was this avatar, this agent of Vecna, or even after a fashion, because he lost the hand and eye in that in Vecna Lives, he was still imbued with Vecna's power. So he had Vecna's ability to learn everybody's secrets and know what was going on and so he was the one that was able to push all of the little all of the pieces of the nobles into fighting one another. He actually just gave them a nudge and let them do a lot of the dirty work. And so we had a Verbobonc civil war as a result of that. And we had nobles really fighting one another and all sorts of things. And it was the great part about that last 3 years was that everything the nobles did was in character for themselves. It was just exacerbated because of they were being manipulated. And so he was our central bad guy there towards the end of that, and he was finally defeated. He ended up wanting to marry
an NPC from one of Ron's adventures, Lady Elise Brandenburg, who was the heir to Lord Augustin, one of our nobles. And we had an adventure where it turned out, this was before we came up with the Year 5 plot arc, that there was some distant Vecnan blood in some of the Verbobonc in those people, in some of Lord Augustin's line. And so we used her to no end to kind of cement the tie. Halmadar wanted to become Vecna, or a proxy of Vecna, and he was going to do it by marrying Lady Elise, who was this agent of Vecna's or whatever, child of Vecna's from a distant time. And he didn't succeed. But yeah,
almost.
it was.
I mean, almost.
Yeah,
he went right up to the very end.
Well,
right?
yeah, at least till June 2009 or 2008.
Right.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
yeah, Ron and Greg got to write some of those wonderful adventures there, and I can. It's funny as I'm talking about it, it's like I'm remembering it like it was yesterday. It was just fun, and the last 3 years we really relied heavily on the regional canon we created. Ron talked about that, where we were using the towns that we created, but we used a lot of the events, and I think that's one of the things I'm proudest about of our accomplishment as Triad, is because we didn't have any Temple of Elemental Evil. We didn't really rely on any established canon other than the history of our region. What was that?
Like a crutch.
Yeah, exactly. We didn't rely on that. We used the stuff we created ourselves, and the history of our region, and just leveraged what I think was a pretty damn good campaign arc. And
and some of the great storytellers to contribute to that. I think that one of the people who is sadly passed recently is Rob Silva, who had quite a lot to contribute. His time as a writer, his time as a Triad member, was just fantastic, especially in propelling those tense plots forward in those last few years, that last back half of the campaign.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
We've lost a few gamers. That's a tough one, Rob. Yeah, that was a tough. Rick Brill, do you guys remember him?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that was brutal. That was a brutal one.
Oh man.
Yep. Yeah, he was a good gamer, and he would show up and be a big, where can I pitch in kind of guy. He wrote a number of modules as well. So, yeah. I remember a good Rick Brill story. We did an interactive where they had to go fight a beholder, and I got the pleasure of DMing Rick's table, and I couldn't figure out the high level damn spells. So Rick sits down. He goes, "Oh my gosh, Jeff's got a beholder. We're screwed. All he has to do is move the beholder to this square, use disintegrate on that square, use this on that one, and we're toast." Well, did he square?
Thanks, Rick.
Disintegrate on, I knew it. Oh,
That's funny.
That's awesome. Yep.
Self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
It was, so that was the best ever. Otherwise, they'd have just toasted the poor guy about one round.
I was thinking, we talked about adversaries and stuff. What about the Horn Society? They were some of my favorite villains and stuff, the Hierarchs, and was they completely wiped out? They were never part of any of the stories in Shieldland or stuff, or did they still lurk around in the shadows, so to speak, or in the sidelines, on the sidelines?
We didn't get too much into the Horn Society, too much. I mean, they were there. They were kind of a threat, but there was too many cooks in the kitchen with the Lords of Critwall to really do that. They were still trying to get organized, and it was kind of cool because Rick LaRue's first character that he was really kind of pushing behind, Lord Torkeep, became kind of everybody's favorite lord. Everybody else would be saying, well, maybe we should negotiate, maybe we should do this, maybe we should do that. And Torkeep's like, give me a horse, give me a sword, and then let's go this way. So, it was kind of that kind of a thing. So we didn't get into those guys as much. It was a lot of region building, I guess would be a better way of describing it for our group. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Cool.
Got another one, Mike? Since I kind of stole that one from you.
Sure. I got another stupid question. I like throwing out silly questions like this. In Shieldlands or even Verbobonc, were you able to play Rennie Barge folk? I'm just curious.
Good question.
Barge folk. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
on the lake, on the river. Could you play? Was that a playable culture
Yeah.
or character?
pretty sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
even-
and they had a big role in several of our adventures. We had a whole section of I don't remember the name of the town that was so upriver that had a whole Rene Bargefolk section, and they ended up being sort of the only ones to help evacuate the city. And somebody, I don't know.
Wasn't that an
remember.
Eglath? Wasn't that an
Yeah,
Eglath?
I think
right?
Eglath.
Yeah.
I think that's the one. Yep.
Yeah. We had one of the players of our region towards the end of the campaign try to put together a Renee town for the town project. And he wanted to make it like a floating barge town. And I had to think about that one because I couldn't figure out quite how to fit that into a framework, but it was a really cool idea. And I think they ended up doing something different if I remember right, but they did try to create a Renee town.
Cool.
Very cool.
Yeah, that's
Excellent.
great. Yep.
Yeah, I think those guys showed up a little bit, especially in the coastal adventures that we'd have. We'd had some pirate mods and stuff like that, and they'd be carting people around, that kind of stuff. I know there was a few people that had characters based on them, but I don't remember much beyond that.
Okay. All right. I'm going to throw out a huge one here. The penultimate momentous event that sticks in your head over the course of the campaign for you. Who wants to go for that one?
Wow.
It may not be something that was game changing, maybe just something that's like, wow, that was awesome.
I've got one
Frogs.
off the top of my head. We had a playtest group that would continually be part of running the modules and stuff. And it felt more like a home game than anything else. So as a result, we were very familiar with those characters. So when we wrote Banners of Torkeep, this was an adventure where they go back in time, a dream state, Jason.
That's
Bowman.
right.
It was
Not
a dream
time travel.
state.
Oh no.
Yes, they're introduced to Gilder Arcanics, this gold dragon. He sends the party back in time, and they go and they see the Shieldlands right before the devastation, and they get to go and see things like Shelton Halfhand before he became a giant jerk, and learn the reason why is his mother was an adventurer and she died doing that in service of the Shieldlands. So we got a lot of empathy for things. And what I did is I took a couple of the characters that were regular players and kind of gave them origin backstories. Like one character had a character called Nadara, and she was a cave girl, and his background was always, she was raised by, wolves and tigers and that kind of thing after her parents were killed. So I had a scene in there where there's a girl called Andara with her parents, and they're basically walking out to an orc ambush, and the character knows that there's no way to save the parents, and that's where they're going to die. And it was kind of a stunning moment for that one player. And at the same time, it was generic enough that other players, when they played, could certainly appreciate the gravity of the situation. So I think that was one of our watershed moments, was that adventure. We had a lot of compliments on it, and people really seemed to enjoy it.
Awesome.
So,
thank you for that answer.
yeah.
Vernon, come on, you got to have one.
Oh, you'd think I would. I don't have anything quite as moving as what Jeff had. I just what's coming to mind immediately right now is just the convention where we were wrapping up our year 5 plot arc. It was at the College of DuPage, and it was around I want to say September or October of 2005. And I just remember just sitting in the room, watching all of the players in there, people just playing playing the end of your adventure, followed by the the end of the 5-year arc adventures, followed by the battle interactives, and just hearing everybody just talking and getting excited and getting into it. And just the look on people's faces, and just hearing their expressions of having fun. It's just sitting there and letting that wash over you, that you got to have a hand in everybody there having that kind of a good time. I remember that, and that has stuck with me a long time. Just being able to be there and just enjoy that.
Awesome. That's a good one.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Right. And I've got something that's actually kind of silly, but strikes me as a memory. One of the plot arcs that we put together was that there was basically a magical system of invisible floating tubes all above Verbobonc. Sounds really silly when you say it out loud, but it was kind of cool.
Road.
The Sky Roads, these ancient elven artifacts that allowed people to go very quickly from one part of the region to another, and then waking them up and putting them to use was part of a series of adventures. One of the things near the end of that, when this whole system of linked invisible magical roads hundreds of feet above the ground were finally in place, was an interactive that we did called the Sky Road Rally, which was basically a race as fast as you can all the way around these on these sky roads. Part of the magic is that no matter, even though the sky roads were sort of flat, anything you were in was acted as though it was going downhill really fast. And so you could get some pretty riotously high speeds, so much so we had to sort of reconsider how sort of like combat movement worked in the course of this interactive. But I was designing this with Greg Hannigan, and one of the things that he wanted to have is, all right, let's have an obstacle where this whole 200-foot long section of the sky road, this farmer with a bunch of chickens in his cart has overturned, and you've got to ride through all these chickens. I'm like, oh, that'll be kind of funny. So we're looking at the map, and I put down like, all right, well, which squares are going to be obstacles as we're designing this, right? And here's, 10 or 15 squares I put on. It's like, okay, so these are the squares with chickens in it that you have to describe. And Greg's like, oh, no. And he takes the yellow pen that we have and just boom, 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 all the way down there. Hundreds of squares of chickens. I'm like, it's ludicrous that there would be so many. He's like, and that's why people will love it. And so we kept it. And I remember rolling that out. That was one of the interactives that ran a couple of times. And each time you roll out the map and say, oh, it's a farmer. And all these chickens have gotten out of his overturned wagon. And then you show the map that has hundreds of 5-foot squares filled with chickens. Everybody had exactly the sort of delight that Greg had predicted, sort of the incredulous, so over the topness of it. That's one of the things that's actually really stuck with me, is how that seemed so silly, but landed so well.
All right, Ron, we're all coming to your place. You have to rerun the interactive.
Oh my
gosh.
gosh.
All right, you got it.
That sounds pretty.
Absolutely.
I think I got a copy of it here somewhere.
Yeah, it's going to take me a little while to refamiliarize myself with with the rules. I've been so immersed in Pathfinder for so long.
So I'm going to ask.
Can I ask a question for the other triad guys?
Absolutely, go for it.
Yeah. Is there any one module, if you could pull the modules out that you wrote, interactives, whatever, cores, meta, whatever, that you'd say, hey, this is one that I did. I might be happy with a lot of them, but this is one that, if you're going to hold up, this is one that was my favorite for whatever reason.
I'm going to break your rule. I have two.
Okay.
And
no, just one.
It was in keeping with, because the year 6 arc was 6-8 arc was the one where I had some direct input on putting it together. I got the privilege of writing the first adventure for the year 6 arc. It was BER 601, The Discontent of Our Winter. And I had really wanted to showcase the new Verbobonc at the time. One of our maxims that we had for writing was the zoo is empty and won't be restocked for some time. And that was just our shorthand of telling the players that, sorry, you're not going to find those 18 hit die giant multi-armed creatures running around the landscape anymore, because we've just been killed by they've just been killed by the giants, and you've killed them all because you were helping the dwarves out. And so, things are going to be a little more mundane. So I had that adventure. I tried to write it, and I didn't succeed. And I succeeded with the next adventure I'm going to tell you about. I tried to write it in such a way that it could be completed without any combat. I wanted a complete combat-free adventure because I wanted people to realize, kicking off, This is not a Verbobonc where you're just going to rush in, hack things with whatever, rules statted out critter that you've made. And
Yeah,
two,
let me interrupt to say how much of a feat this is, how daring this idea is, because by this point, a lot of people had sort of cavalierly referred to the Living Greyhawk campaign as 3 fights and a bag of gold. I mean, you're sitting on one of these adventures.
I think that was
You're gonna
Greg
have-
Homerding.
Right.
I think that's right. You're going to have 3 fights, and you're going to get a bag of gold at the end, and that's what you're going to do. And so, the fact that you're thinking of something that is 0 fights, but still a compelling way to spend 4 hours, is really kind of revolutionary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had hit upon the idea that an encounter is just something that has to expend resources. That was the guiding philosophy of 3.0 and 3.5. So if a resource is whatever you want it to be. You could cast a spell, but it doesn't have to be combat. You don't have to get in a fight. So I tried to structure this adventure for no combats, and I made the ending completely modular. I stole the idea from a Living Arcanics adventure called Castle by the Sea. And there were blocks of text that were read specifically based on what you did or didn't do in that adventure. It was a modular, and it was a modular ending that the DM read the parts that were appropriate for the things you did. And I really liked that because it could end to any one of a number of different ways. It put players of different meta orgs into conflict with one another in game. We had our members of the Mounted Borderers, the members of the family, noble houses. All of them were in this adventure with different agendas and goals that were sometimes conflicting with one another. And so we wrote the adventure so that everyone could complete it. They may not accomplish their goal, but they would get, because we were still trying it out, and we didn't want to penalize people for, with the mechanically by, I made this choice, so my character's going to fall behind. But we did have in-game effects that came from that. And then the next adventure that played off of this even far better than I thought was VER 604, Sign of the Black Orchid. We got to write that one with Rob Silva, as I mentioned, and another gentleman, Darren Spurrier. And that, more than anything else, between those 2 adventures, that one, again, no combat. It was an investigative adventure. But
Is that the one that starts with a fire?
Yes.
Like negotiating your way out of the burning building is actually one of the encounters in that.
Yes.
So.
Yes. And so that one also showcased the conflict of the gnarly elves that they were having with Verbobonc. They actually, and the players couldn't do anything about it. They actually wanted to attack and fight the people in there. And I'm like, and Rob and I talked about this, and it's like, there's no way this encounter works out mechanically. Either if they're facing like an elven general, they're going to get slaughtered, or they're going to win and create an even worse incident in terms of like what the relations are with the elves. So we just didn't put the stat blocks in there, and we let people deal with the consequences of the choices that they made in that adventure. And between those 2, I am most proud of how we did that, because those 2 starting off kicked off the idea that you don't have to have, you're not going, if you're just playing a character who's just there with the feats for fighting stuff, you're not necessarily going to get the success that you're looking for. You're going to have to make choices based on your regional affiliations, and there's going to be consequences, positive and negative, to those choices. And those set the tone. And I'm so happy with how those adventures turned out, because they set the stage for what we were able to do in year 7 and 8. I'm sorry, I talk way too much.
No, absolutely not, Vernon. That was perfect. Great question. Great
You should
answers.
see me write box text.
Oh, no, that's awesome. That was fantastic. That was a great question too. And I'm not trying to bust stones, but Gary asked, if you had picked any other region to manage, which would it be? I think we already had that one, right?
Yeah, we did that one.
Yeah.
So
I got lucky.
Absolutely. Okay. Give me, and whoever wants to take this one. a day at a convention with how many people were there? Living Greyhawk, how many tables you got? Like, you know, when you got the big get-togethers, just so people who have never experienced Living Greyhawk like yourself can know what totality of amount of people you were dealing with at one time.
Well, I mean, certainly the size of conventions changed and the number of people that were there changed. But sort of at the height, I want to say that in Verbobonc, we would have probably, I think that the big ones at the College of DuPage that we had would fit, I want to say maybe 30 tables. I want to say.
Yeah.
Each of those with 7 people at it, right? Because we'd fill those. We'd fill them with a GM and 6 players at every table. And a typical day would be broken up into 3 4-hour event blocks with breaks for lunch and snacks, right? And there'd be a rotating schedule, so it wouldn't necessarily be everybody playing the same thing at the same time. Somebody might be playing Discontent of Our Winter at these 10 tables, and other people playing For Man or Beast at these other tables, or so on. But usually on the Saturday, which was kind of the big, most attended day of the conventions, people would have different things to play in the first slot and the second slot, but the third slot is where we would put together the interactive. That was the event where everybody in the room was playing the same game, basically, at a bunch of different tables, bunch of different GMs organizing that. We would have people set up to be sort of, runners bringing information to and from each of the tables as they completed, GMs holding up their hands in order to signal things, my table completed this objective or failed to complete this objective, and sort of organizing things together. That was where a day of playing some games with your friends turned into playing a game with a room full of what could be a couple hundred, 200-300 other people together.
Wow.
Damn.
Yeah. We didn't have quite that many players. But we'd get into the 100 plus, no doubt. Especially some of the adventures where rumor would get around that we were going to rerun an old module or something where there was a cert. We gave away a griffin egg at one point, and then
I remember that.
Yeah, this was my living hell that I created. We put a griffin egg in, and it would slowly hatch over a number of adventures. Well, then you would email us, and then we would roll up the griffin's stats and its personality and email it back to you. Well, you sit there, I'm at work typing up a motion for, a dissolution of marriage or trying to type a will. And all of a sudden, ping, 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 ping. Here's like 5 emails. I just got the griffin this weekend. We ended up keeping like dice right at the law table, so I could, when I took a break, okay, let's roll this turkey up. But yeah,
they had to be individuals. You couldn't use the same stat block for all of them. They had to be
unique, right?
Well, yeah. But then, you wanted them to be all unique. Like you'd have one that would be a coward, one that would just, no matter what, I'm going to go into battle. I don't care if it's an orc or Ius himself. All that kind of stuff. So they'd have these personalities. And if they played them long enough, they became pretty darn cool characters too. So that was kind of fun. But yeah, those, the time put into organizing the game days, was just insane. You'd have all the play testers you'd have to do. You'd have to get the modules printed. And, I was fortunate because we had an industrial level printer. Hey, I'm a lawyer, you burn paper. Fun. And
I did the same.
We'd be able to print off modules, get them collated for people, then run around, try to get prizes from some of the local game stores and stuff like that. All that kind of stuff would go on, and then the people would be registering. And that was a process in and of itself. Warhorn back in the day was a little more cumbersome, maybe is a good question. And so there was a number of different ways to register for the modules. And you'd show up with friends or you'd show up just by yourself. And it was pretty cool because we would have people that would only want to play with their game group, and you'd try to, get them to do that. And then we'd have people that just didn't care. They'd fit in anywhere, anywhere they could. And you'd become friends with so many people, just so many. I think that was the overwhelming part.
Yeah.
So-
And their characters became people that you became friends with, if that sounds weird.
no, that doesn't at all. Trust
Yeah,
me,
you
I
knew
know
who,
that.
you knew who these people were based on their characters. And the funny thing about all this is, for all this work that it was to pull these off, I mean, when we would do one of these big conventions, there was basically only two. Everybody was volunteer. There were basically only two people making any money at this. One was the person who was actually running the convention, and the second was somebody who was vending product there.
Yeah,
I mean, that's.
food.
Other than that, the GMs are volunteering their time. We're volunteering our time. The players are coming in to do something fun. So it's the fact that so much of this went off on a wholly volunteer basis still amazes me quite a bit.
Yeah.
We always comp the GMs. We
Yeah, the
would.
GM wouldn't have to pay to get into the convention, or wouldn't have to pay for the slots.
Yeah, and then we'd try to kick them back $1 or $2 per table or something. I don't remember the deal. It was a long time ago, and we got tons of prize support. We have an amazing game store in the Twin Cities during that time period. There's a few more now. The Source Comics and Games out of St. Paul, and they would donate, bucket loads of stuff. So
That's awesome.
Vernon, Jason Zavoda asks online, were the conventions much more important to the final storyline, or everything else that went on in the campaign itself? Where is that? Was this the vital linchpin of each, doing the conventions?
Well, that's certainly where you got the most players together, and it's where you had premieres happen. So that tended to be that way. We tried to leave things out when we had critical events, so that, like a 3 or 4 month window, so that maybe the person who couldn't make the convention and just gets to do it at a home game could still have a little bit of input on that. But by and large, the conventions were just because that's where you have the most attendance. It was just, hey, let's get if most of the people at the convention make this decision, it probably seems like it's the way it's going to go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah, there is actually, and that's one thing that I agree with what Jeff was saying earlier, that the regional nature of this was actually one of the real striking elements of Living Greyhawk. But there was a real sense, as I was feeling, especially near the end, there was a real risk of disenfranchisement, right? If you were somebody who just didn't have the money to go to a big con, or didn't have the money to travel, you sometimes felt like, this campaign and its neat events sort of aren't for me. And I felt that we shouldn't be making people feel that way. So as Vernon said, we pushed a lot of the critical elements out into the adventures that you could get online, because it was important to have people at their home games be able to experience the crux, if not all of, at least the crux of the story.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, the interactives were fun, but for the most part, they did not change the storyline. They might cap off a storyline, but not really change the storyline. The storyline was something people should be able to play at home. Absolutely. Yep.
Cool. Anna, Mike, any final questions for here? And then we'll do some round discussion, see what everyone
That's
has
doing
going
pretty
on.
good by me.
Yeah.
It was awesome discussion. I just love it. I've been sitting here like, wow, this is so cool. With
All right.
stories and stuff. Yep.
Here's what I have to ask, and then we'll go around the table on this, on a final one. What are you doing now, game-wise? And do you sometimes utilize what you learned and what you experienced in your Living Greyhawk times? Does it affect what you do with your friends or in your groups to this day? So I'm going to start with Jeff.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a regular group that we play with. Some of them are the old play testers. One of the Shieldland Triads sits in. We've got complete newbie characters, and we're playing old first edition D&D modules using 5th edition. So it's complete madness and chaos. It's a lot of fun, and we're trying to go with that Shieldlands feel a little bit, even though we're doing Hamlet and Temple of Elemental Evil. So we've got subsets of the region. You could be a member of the Hamlet militia, that kind of stuff, and tailor your character that way. So we're doing a lot of that. Right now we're in the temple itself, down around level 3. I think they just cleared out, or close to it. So, great things ahead. It's really interesting to see how jarring the 1st edition rules were versus 5th edition. And some things are an improvement and some things I kind of miss. But those old modules are certainly very interesting, and when you read them the way they're put together. Every room has at least 1 or 2 magic items. There's, if you can't find 5,000 gold off a wandering orc, I'm not sure why you should play the module. We have a brand new player. He'd never played in his entire life. He's in his 60s. He plays now. And he plays this peace-loving monk until something dies, in which case he's gutted everything because he learned Gary Gygax shoved a +1 shield inside a lizard in the moat house.
Yeah.
So everything must have
Cut it out of the roper. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he guts it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That's awesome.
Yeah, so
Cool.
so the Greyhawk days certainly had an impact. Absolutely.
You're mostly
good
playing
stuff.
are you mostly playing a home game now? What are you doing? What do you got going on now? We'll do both at the same time. What's going on with Jeff as far as gaming goes?
Well, I mean, a couple of things. I mean, we do the D&D gaming quite a bit. We still have our annual, jeepers, we must be on our 12th year now, Orchid Beer Fest once a year. It's a game convention. There's only 2 rules. Number 1, I will drink a beer, and number 2, I will play a game. What everybody else who shows up does, that's up to them. But those are the 2 primary rules for the gaming day. Then just kind of in my own life, I do a web comic. I've been doing it for about a year. Bad Science on Facebook. Mad scientist, robots, bunnies, and dad jokes and good times.
Nice.
So that's kind of what I've been up to.
Excellent. If you want to link anything, please feel free to do so
Yes.
in chat. Okay. If you want to link that webcomic, please do. Feel free. Okay. Excellent. Vernon.
Well, I have, as I mentioned the last time I was on, I haven't gamed that much since Living Greyhawk was over. I did Pathfinder Society for first edition for a while when I could with my Greyhawk buddies, because as I've gotten older, I find I fear change and just want to hang with my friends, and that's it. And so I play with Greg Homerding, who was a really good friend of mine that I made during Living Greyhawk, and was with us in Circa, our gaming group in Central Illinois. And I still try to get together with him semi-regularly. But by and large, I don't have a regular gaming group. I've got a family, much like Ron does. I don't have his family.
Wait, what?
And so,
awesome.
as I mentioned, my daughter and I do karate, and we do that twice a week. And so I have a lot of fun doing that with her. I'm also trying to do voice acting in my spare time when I'm not doing my day job, and so that I don't want to say that keeps me busy, because it doesn't keep me as busy as much as I would like. But it's something I'm doing. And
Cool.
my wife likes doing stuff with me, but I'm anxiously awaiting.
That's a bonus.
Yeah, I know, no kidding. It's a surprise to me every day. I'm anxiously awaiting Joe Block, who is the Greyhawk Grognard. I'm waiting his updates that he's looking at making to the Temple of Elemental Evil and the Giant series, because he's gone back and combed through a lot of what Gary Gygax said about those adventures and compared them to what was actually done, and he's going to try to redo them in the style that he thought Gary wanted to do with them, with some of the plot arcs involving the Elder Elemental Eye and what was going on with the Drow. And I just might use that as an excuse to get back into gaming. I'm really looking forward to that when that comes out. And I know that's not coming out immediately, but I don't have time to play immediately, so it works out for me.
Vernon, we had Joe on a few weeks ago, and he discussed it. So,
oh man, I missed that.
Yeah.
I love
Go
his
back and
stuff.
watch it. Yeah.
When he did his map of a Western Auric in the style of a Darlene, I had so many ideas for writing stuff with our clan Rockhall dwarves, and wanting to do something with them, and sending them off to find their ancient homeland, because they came from someplace and settled in Verbobonc, and I wanted to find out where they came from. And so I ran down a rabbit hole in my mind on that for a while, and kind of came up with some ideas. But but yeah. So I'm sorry again, I'm talking a lot.
No,
That's
great.
awesome. Yeah.
Ron, no, I'm sorry. Go on.
I certainly hope you get back into gaming.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
Ron, do you still game? I know you don't do.
So how does this play into what I do? I mean, it literally pays my mortgage and puts food on my dining room table for my kids, right? That's my job now, is to be an adventure designer, adventure developer, and I really credit Living Greyhawk with having gotten my start here.
Oh yeah.
Right now, I am somewhere between. I'm in the process of making an accurate count. I'm somewhere between 150 and 200 published gaming credits,
Great.
and my first
Nice.
24 of those were in the Living Greyhawk campaign.
Wow.
So that's been fantastic. Not my very first one. That was back in 1993, I want to say. For a game called Torg. As far as gaming, I know. As far as gaming, I do play Torg every Friday in alternating groups. One that I run in, one that I play. I play every Monday night in a first edition Pathfinder game. I play every other Tuesday night
Wow.
in a Pathfinder second edition game that I run. And every Wednesday, I alternate between a Pathfinder second edition game that I play and a Starfinder game that I play. So I do a fair amount of gaming still, yes. But in addition to the gaming I do for fun and working for Paizo is my job, I actively run a third-party publishing company called Run 'em Up Games. I have pivoted away from the 24 or so products I've done through that, which you can see at the website I pinged on the chat. I've actually pivoted away from an aggressive product release schedule to running a blog that provides advice in running games. It's the hashtag RPG writer tips, how you write adventures, how you plan things out for your characters, everything from how you design an entire adventure path from beginning to end, which I did. There's a whole free Pathfinder Second Edition adventure path on my blog, to the right and wrong way to draw angled corridors on a map, right? So it's everything from very big scale to very small scale. But I am immersed in this, right? This is what I do, both professionally and for fun, and it's an awesome place to be, awesome way to be.
That is
Cool.
that is fantastic. But
Yeah. Fun fact.
And you don't have clients anymore.
What's that?
No, and you don't have clients anymore.
yeah,
Being a lawyer, you don't have to-
I don't, although I do have to say I've kept my bar membership up and I'm doing some mentoring through a local law school, and that feels really good. It feels really good to still be doing something with that career that I left behind to really sort of help people.
Fun tip.
That's cool.
Yeah, fun tip. When Ron first started at Paizo, I was on some of their message boards, and people were complaining about stuff, as people do. And I mentioned something like, I blame this on Lundeen. He did this before. Darn you, Lundeen. And apparently that got flagged by somebody. Ron, do you know this guy? Because we'll ban him if you don't.
Is this like hate speech? Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's
No, I know this joker. Let him go. I had to laugh when Ron told me that. It's like, really?
yeah.
Too fun.
So, Ron, if you don't mind, Anna and I and Mike and I are going to put you on a special quest because Eric Mona has said he would come on the show multiple times.
Yes, so we are still
Oh.
waiting to hear from him again.
Yes.
And hopefully
He
he'll come on.
is, I mean, his office is like, I don't know, maybe 20 feet from my cube. Normally, that said, we are, because of being in Seattle, we're at the epicenter of the coronavirus.
Yeah, so we
we've all
probably have to wait.
scattered.
Yeah.
We're all working from home.
Okay.
And so
I'll-
we're more distant from one another than usual.
Yeah, I'll ping him again, and we'll see if we can get him on. If he sits in his quarantine, then we can
That may be
get
the
him.
right
Tell
time.
him, tell him about your experiences on the show.
Absolutely.
I will.
I will
Better
sell a
not.
I will sell a kidney if I can be on that show.
You'll sell a kidney?
I
Well,
will
you
sell
know.
a kidney.
So-
If I got to use that money to pay Eric to get on, I will.
All right. Before we do final, Anna, Mike, and me, Casey, I got a brainstorm here. When we do our fundraiser next year in 2020 or down the road, I think you should get something together and get a bunch of the Living Greyhawk people and they participate in a part of it. Wouldn't that be cool? Like, whether it's all remote or whatever, because we did a 24-hour fundraiser, Greyhawk 1, a few weeks ago. Great success. but I think, and Casey actually came to my house and played in it, and Anna remoted in. I think it would be really cool. Get you guys all together and do something. So just an
That would be really
idea.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
That would be
Yeah.
cool.
Okay.
That would be really neat.
All right, cool.
Yep.
We'll work on that. So, or someone else can, we'll figure out some logistics on it. But I think it would be really, yeah. See, Frank from Night Heart Gaming says it would be a great idea too. So,
Yep.
and he
Oh,
was
cool.
part of it as well. So, just a little idea there. Yeah, they come to me in, sometimes I just want to say it, but so I don't forget it. So, all right, Mike, what do you got going on, man? Anything exciting before GaryCon? We got a lot of cool announcements coming
2
up
weeks,
for everyone.
huh? 2 weeks.
Oh
Fingers
my
crossed.
gosh.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Hopefully. Hopefully.
Yeah. I'm not running my Sunday game anymore. Took a break. One of my other friends is running a different system, Blades in the Dark. Anyone heard of that?
Oh yes, I have. I've played one Blades of the Dark type game,
Okay.
and imagine that! Look, Ron played a game. I played one sort of cyberpunk version of Blades in the Dark that was awesome. So
Okay.
I'm a big fan of that system. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. I have no idea. Besides that, I got a new blog post for everybody today. Some magical dust
Cool.
from
Awesome.
the land of Ol. You're welcome.
Ooh.
Otherwise, yeah, GaryCon. I'm kind of just saving up all my excitement for that.
Oh,
There
I
you
have
go.
I'll have a question for you upcoming too, Mike. So, on availability on something. So,
Sure.
Anna.
Okay. Well, I'm deep into GaryCon prep here. So I spent the better part of several days to actually print it for the first time. I printed my map in full scale.
Woohoo.
So this
Oh,
is
it's
now
awesome.
I printed it on 11 by 17 sheets, the high definition photo on superb photo paper, and it's 66 sheets. It's 10 by 10 feet. And
Oh my
it's
goodness.
not that I printed it larger than this is the scale it's supposed to be printed at. So the smallest print is 6. The smallest text labels are 6 points at this scale.
Oh my
And it's
goodness.
10 by 10 feet. So I hope now that Luke, or we can get a big board, and I will bring the map and a whole bunch of pins, and we can actually pin it up. And I put it out on my kitchen table. I put like one third of it or half of it, so to speak, in size. And it's I can hold up to the camera so you can see. So it's printed
That's
in
amazing.
full
Awesome.
full detail.
Of course, you
And
had to
it's
put your
actually
look up.
yeah, this is the first time I've seen the map in how large it actually is, and it's kind of crazy big.
Anna's not going to rest till she has a life-size map of Ol.
Like scale
well,
1 mile
Yeah.
equals 1 mile.
Yeah. So this is kind of crazy. So that's one thing that I've been doing, and I'm also working on all the slides and stuff for my map cartography presentation. So there will be a couple of new cool projects that I haven't talked to anyone about. So that will be presented. I think people will be really cool with. And also, I'm going to present what the next generation Greyhawk maps will look like. So some of the style and technology and stuff. Because now when I've done this and spent 20 years doing it, then I start all over again and do it again. So yeah. So that's the idea. So yeah.
Circle of life.
Yep. So that's a bit what I'm up to, so to speak. So yep.
You could get some small children and play life-size Risk with that map.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is kind of cool. I think it's probably, when you print it like this, I'm pretty sure it's the biggest fantasy map ever made.
Yeah.
In many ways. I think so. Yeah, it's kind of cool.
And another great tidbit: Josh Pop, who is not
yes,
on.
I printed 6 sheets specially for him that he will get.
He was
that
one
I
of our
printed first.
top donators during our mega stream event for St. Jude, where we raised during this event over $2,500. His choice was part of Anna's map, and Anna printed part of that high-res map.
I printed 6 sheets first, and I packed them up for him, so he will have them. Then I had to print all the 66 sheets. So it's kind of crazy big, but it's kind of fun, and it's the 1200 DPI. Premium color on my photo printer, so it's the best. But don't ask me how much this cost in ink and stuff. So yeah.
A kidney?
Yeah.
It was either that or Eric Mona, I suppose.
Yeah, no kidding,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, now we can bribe. Well, we can bribe Eric Mona with this.
Yeah,
maybe, but we'll
I
see.
got the kidney. You've used yours.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for a great night. This was awesome.
Thank you.
I got
This was
some.
a ton of fun.
I got some
Thank
unbelievable announcements coming. Are you guys ready for this stuff? Normally they're boring, but this one's good. Next week's Legends and Lore. Let's talk about that right away. It's going to be a really fantastic show, and we're going to do Earth Journal 32 and Gary Con preparations and preview. All right, so this one, Christoph Icarus has the new Earth Journal coming out. We're going to have him on the show. And we're going to have a bunch of the authors on the show who have articles to discuss a little tidbit of what's coming up in this next Earth Journal, which includes Mike, who's got an article, myself, who has an article, Jason Zavoda, who has 2 articles, Aaron Froke will be on for the first time ever. You ever see his cool maps on a lot of the Facebook posts? And if he's around, Gary, we're trying to get you on finally because you have an article in the Earth Journal to discuss. So if Gary, if you're still on, we'd love to see you come on and chat with us for the show next week. But you know, we're trying any way we can to try and get him on. We're trying to get him on. So Gary's still on, but we'll see. And then we may ask a couple others. Yes, you like that, Mike? Good one.
Oh yeah. No, I was going to say it might take Vernon's other kidney to get Gary on the show.
I've only got one.
Yes. So I'm excited about this because this is going to be in published form for people at GaryCon. And we all signed it last year, and because it was the first time I ever had a published article ever. Was the Earth Journal from last year for GaryCon? So that will be next week's show, Wednesday, 8 p.m. EDT. Tomorrow night, I'll pop up some announcements. We continue our Trials of the Legion in the Shieldlands, Part 4. And I hit the wrong button. Sorry, hit the wrong button. I got so many things on my stream deck here. Wrong announce, shout out. Part 4. It's called the Night Riders, and we'll have 2 adventuring groups actually interacting with each other on this one, so we'll see. And a lot of those characters aren't too fans of the others, so that'll be an interesting part. And that'll be 2 weeks. That'll take us right into GaryCon. And then Sunday, I know Jason will be on, and probably Tim will be on for this, and maybe some of my other guys. We got delving into half orcs and half ogres of Greyhawk. So we've done our demi-human series. Let's talk about the mixed breeds, the half orcs, and we have half ogres in our campaign. So let's talk about them. There's some pretty memorable ones. I mean, half ogres go way back in the Dragon magazine. What's that, Mike?
So don't forget when you're talking about your half ogres.
There you go, man. So, Mike, if you want to come on and discuss that, man, but you may be playing still, right?
We'll see. We'll see.
We'll see if you got a game.
Right.
Here's the week after, the Sunday after, number 86. Will be our 5th DM's Roundtable discussion that I've had on Gavin, where I get DMs and we just talk about issues, we talk about rules, we talk about different settings, modules, whatever the questions are that are out in the audience. So right now I have 2 brand new. I have Chuck Kumbau from Babunski coming on. I have Zeltaris coming on. And Mike, I wanted to see, you've never been on a DM's Roundtable. I wanted to see if you wanted to come on and participate in that. That's a week from Sunday. That's the last Gavin before GaryCon. So just, if you can, okay, let me know. And I'm trying to get, there's 1 or 2 other newbies I'm trying to get on. Will's been on every one, and Anna's been on all but 1. So... And we may have a couple other regulars as well on that one. So that's what's going on. And then I'm ready for GaryCon, as long as hopefully there's enough people there, right? Who knows what's going to happen in a week? Yes, Zeltaris has verified, Frank, that he will be coming on to a DM's Roundtable to be his first time in this discussion. So, yep, I'm trying to get as many new DMs to participate as possible, because you always get a different point of view on that. So and said, if you know of anyone else who's a streamer, especially who would love to do that, and I cannot wait. Date is already set for the next Legends and Lore Living Greyhawk, guys. Joe and I were chatting back and forth. So look for the next time we have Living Greyhawk individuals on to talk their regions. We're talking Wednesday, April 8th, so it's less than a month. We'll have the next one for the next Living Greyhawk, and I'll reach out to some of the other individuals who haven't been on yet, who said they were interested, besides Joe, and we'll get them on, and we'll keep this rolling. So I know I missed some.
This is fun.
Good. I'm glad you guys, all three of you enjoy this.
This is fun.
Okay,
Absolutely.
cool. I really
Awesome.
appreciate. Yes, Christoph was finishing it up today to get it to the printer. So, good question on the Earth Journal. It's in a form where if we get a rough copy, and each author can discuss their, what they're doing, and then Christoph will talk about some that aren't on the show. But we'd love to get, once again, Gary, we'd love to get you on to discuss your article. I'll say that another time, but we'll see. So, thank you all. I know I missed 3 or 4 different things, but that's okay. There's always tomorrow night and Wednesday nights and Sunday night. So, great audience again. Great cast of individuals in this discussion. This was wonderful, and Greyhawk's alive, everyone. If you're not a regular, go to these. Here's the Greyhawk Online. Okay, that's our Discord, and there's a lot of activity going on in that Discord. We're all of us, Anna, myself, and Christoph, Carlos, Alan Grow. They're all on the Discord. So Brian Blumklotz, it's a great place. And then Greyhawk Online. Oops. Yeah, did I hit that twice? I hit the same thing twice. And then there's the Greyhawk Online. That site is growing by leaps and bounds. Check that out. Every Earth Journal is archived there. All the legends and lores are getting archived on that Greyhawk Online as well. If you haven't already, one last thing, please throw me a follow. I'm trying to get to the over 2050 right now. We're close. We're getting there. It was great when we surpassed 2,000, but just hit that heart button up top. Give us a follow. It's free to do. Thursday night is a follower subscriber giveaway from Miniature Building Authority. $75 gift certificate to Miniature Building Authority for a lucky subscriber. And anyone who's a follower is able to sign up for the $25 gift certificate giveaway. Miniature Building Authority is a great company. And they got a new Kickstarter coming out, everyone. It's called Shantytown Kickstarter, and I will have the vids for that soon. So finally, Harbor Town will go away, and Shantytown Kickstarters will go up after, a year and a half of showing those vids. So that's what's up. Thank you all. Have a great night. And we can still chat over the final stuff, guys. So sit tight. Make sure I hit the right button this time. Did I hit the right button? I did!
Yay!
Yep.
Well,
Thank
it
you.
was a real-
Thank you so much for coming on. This was awesome. Yeah.
This is always a blast.
Thanks,
I've had so much fun.
Awesome.
And I get to see people I haven't seen in years. I mean,
That's right.
It's cool.
Well, let me know the next time you're ready to do it. I'm happy to come back. This was fun.
Absolutely. We want to keep it rotating, and maybe we'll talk other topics. But we all. Hey, Greg, what's going on, man? Good to see you on. We will always welcome everyone back, man.
Excellent. I'd love to come back. This
Oh,
was a lot of
definitely.
fun.
yeah.
Definitely. And if you, all right, I'll put it there now. If you get, you get the man back on, everyone can come on, man, that night,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
We can get Eric on just because he said yes to Anna like 3 times.
Yep.
Man, that would be awesome. And then we'll throw you.
But I know he's busy, so yeah.
Yeah, I know he's busy, but just to talk Paizo and all, it would be a great thing. But yeah, let's have everyone back in a few months. We'll do another topic of some sort.
Yeah.
That'd be great, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe we'll have instead of the DM's roundtable, maybe I'll have a Living Greyhawk roundtable event so we can get 5 to 6 of these on at once and just talk general topics on D&D and gaming. We can do that. Absolutely. So,
I'm going to log off. I got to get some other stuff done,
Jeff.
but thank you.
I was just going to say that.
no
Thank you,
Yeah, I'm
problem.
doing the same. But
Yep.
what I get out of this is if I manage to get Eric on, then Vernon owes me 1 kidney.
Yes. 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 I'll get you a kidney somewhere.
No questions asked.
Yeah, thank you, Ron.
Yeah, Ron, give Steph my best, please.
I absolutely will. And best to you and yours.
Absolutely, guys. Thank you so much, Anna and Mike and
Night.
everyone. Thanks.
Yeah,
Take care.
that was a ton of fun. Thank you.
You're welcome, gents. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Yeah, it's so much fun. Woo.
Well, I hope you all had a good time on that show. Everyone who's still on, thank you. That was awesome.
And we have the ever mysterious.
Hey, there's the ever mysterious Tim. Look, even Anna calls you that now.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Tacky.
And now you're doing your crafting again. Yeah. Tacky.
Have a good night, everyone. See you soon.
Bye.
See you tomorrow night.